Okay, welcome everyone to this ShiftCo special event, Creating Purpose-Driven Careers and Workplaces. It's my pleasure to welcome our presenters, Peter Mattiece and Joe Laranjero of the Conscious Business Institute, or CBI. Founded by Peter in 2005, CBI has helped more than 28,000 leaders and teams on 5 continents create wholesome and purpose-driven cultures in organizations, including Starbucks, Intel, BMW, Twitter, Allianz, Siemens, and many others. And Peter, as I hand it off to you, I'm going to assume that you've also worked with lesser known, smaller companies and conscious business startups too. So not to intimidate anybody, but you've worked across the spectrum. I just want to affirm that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. My heart is really in people instead of organizations. But since organization seems to be the sticky stone in our world, when you go back to work on Monday morning, that's where we focus on. But at the heart is obviously people, whether it's one individual or a whole team of hundreds of people.
Great. All right. Thanks. So I've got a couple more people coming in. And Peter, I'm just going to hand it off to you. Feel free to go ahead and share, or if you want to, if you have another intro, just please proceed.
Yeah, I think since we're a small group, we can make it really personal and look at your cases one by one if we even have time. So my suggestion is that we just go through our little plan that we had here and go through the model so everybody is on the same page, and then we dive into your individual situations. That would be my suggestions. And to get started, I just want to hand over to Joe to get us rolling here.
Yeah, and we can keep the screen as it is. We don't need a slide. So we'll do a simple breakout. And Roger and Nora, I think if you were on our call the other week, you'll be familiar with this. And the first breakout that we're going to have, just to get everyone into a bit of a flow state, is we're going to discuss joy. And there's a quote that I love. I have it hanging up in my room, and it's always a reminder for me. And it says that the most beautiful moments in life are when we are expressing our joy, not when we are seeking it. And maybe just reflect for a moment amongst just each one of us, how we break down the percentage of our time with pursuing and seeking versus actually expressing it. So just think about your day and the activities that you put your focus on, and how your time commitments are allocated, and what percentage of your living state do you put forth to pursuing your joy and seeking your joy versus the percentage that you are actually expressing it and living it. And I know for me, it's very imbalanced. I wish I had better balance, and I think we could probably all say that if we're being honest. But the point of life is to be it, to have it, to experience it, to express it. That's what all the pursuit is for. All the seeking is just to bring us to that state. But we spend such a limited amount of time there that it's really, I think, important for us to reflect on this for each one of our own lived experiences and how we embrace that. So in the spirit of sharing simple moments of joy, maybe just go around the room just very quickly. Everyone can maybe share a moment recently where they actually genuinely experienced joy. And I always say it doesn't have to be anything profound. Actually, it really shouldn't be anything profound. Time with family, maybe an adventure, a time spent outside, a meal, a book, a video, a movie, a song, perhaps even just sleep, right? Because it's so many of these simple things, we think it has to be something extraordinary because we're bombarded with everything that's extraordinary so often in our lives these days. But the joyful moments are typically the very ordinary ones where we feel this deep sense of presence. So think about, for yourself, a moment of joy that you've had. Anyone wish to start?
Sure, I'll start. This is Larry Hawkins. I've actually been on a very intentional mission for the past year and a half to get to joy. So for me, it shows up in everyday life because I've been working on cultivating an experience of where that is what my life is. But for me, the moments come with me and my wife, belly laughter, where you have to sit down because you're laughing so hard. Those moments bring me immense joy.
It's fantastic. You found your life partner, right, Larry?
Yes.
Fantastic. Maybe we'll just share one or two more.
Hi, I'm Sandy.
Hey, Sandy.
It's easy for me. My little grandson, I'm in the middle of a huge move, downsizing from a large house to a 2-bedroom townhome. So it's been a beating in many ways, but seeing my little grandson look at the duck pond, and he's just learning how to talk, and to point out there and say, duck, duck. It just warms my heart that he recognizes that's where he saw the duck. So that was easy for me.
We can learn a lot from children.
Absolutely. That's why you're not seeing me today, by the way.
No worries. Someone else? We'll do one more.
Well, actually, I can share. My name is Leticia, and actually the meaning of Leticia is joy. So I found that like maybe 1 year ago or something like that, and I put that into my mission of life, to be joyful and to have everything around me to be joy. So I've been in this path to master joy because of that sense. And last week, actually, I mean my entrepreneurship is. I'm a consultant for digital transformation, and I found myself sometimes like 90% work, maybe, I don't know, those little moments of joy, don't having them. And then my moment of joy was just to say stop, and this is not happening anymore. And it's not sustainable. And so last week, I think it was, I decided to start a new entrepreneurship, which is named House of Joy, which is my house, and where I will find like everything that makes me joyful, and I want to share it. Is like just welcoming you into my home, where everything around having joy and fun and adventure will be shared. So that's why I'm here.
Wow,
Thank you.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And Leticia's joy, is that in Spanish?
No, Leticia is, well, it's in, I am Mexican. So it's in Spanish, and in Spanish it's called alegría. That's the meaning. It's joy.
Yeah, alegría. Okay, I'm Portuguese, and that's similar.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for sharing. Just a bit more of a reflection on this for, I think, all of us here. Joy is really presence, right? It's the arriving in the moment. And Eckhart Tolle talks about this all the time. That joy cannot be achieved through some future state, right? That says, one day I'd like to be joyful, and that's my goal, that's my aim. Because that one day, when you live it, you will experience it as the now, as presence. So even by believing this notion of one day I'd like to be joyful, we are admitting that joy and presence are one, which means that it's always available to us. So thank you guys for sharing, and it's really important to stop and have these moments. So really appreciate it. So we'll get into a little bit of the heart of the webinar around conscious business, and the reflection around joy is part of that, because it really is about conscious business. And think about the order of those words, right? The order of those words has meaning. That conscious or consciousness is not a sidecar or a sidekick. It's not Robin to Batman, or whatever analogy you want to use. It's actually it's the gateway. It's the entryway. It's the initiation, right? And it's where ultimately the liberation will come from, is conscious. And we view these two words literally. It's conscious business. And to get started about conscious business, I'm going to pose a question to the group, just to get some thoughts and reflections about what everyone is seeing out there in their own environment, in the marketplace, through people that they're interacting with. And I'd like you to think about conscious business in its traditional definition, right? Business with purpose, business that serves people, communities, planet, that triple bottom line viewpoint. And what are some signs, what are some markers, some evidence that you are witnessing that's causing you to think, this thing is really catching on? Like, we're making really good progress. What's giving you that hope that this is growing, it's becoming a bigger part of our reality? Like, what are the signs, the markers, the telltale signals that make you think, yeah, we're getting there, it's progressing, it's moving, I'm feeling good about it? What are some of those signs, some of those markers? What are the things that are working that you see out there?
I'll share. For me, it has been the increase in frequency and depth of conversation around the idea of purpose and engagement. Because for us, like I said, we've been doing this officially since 2014. It's, for the most part, feel like fighting an uphill battle of trying to convince people that, hey, you should be intentional with how you're developing your employees. You should be intentional with how you're engaging and talking about purpose and framing career paths around purpose and passion. And it's been met with skepticism the majority of the time. We found people who have been believers, but they're typically early adopters. Whereas now that we're on the, we're a year into the pandemic and people are starting to figure out what does life look like in parallel with it. Employers are finding that employees are more intentional now. They care more about their joy, their passion, their engagement with their day-to-day life. And thus, in turn, managers and supervisors and people who are decision makers are realizing they have to adapt. They have to be more open to the idea. And so the conversations are increasing and they're genuine now and not just, lip service, so to speak. So that's been the signs for me.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, Nora, please.
Well, I appreciate that people are really starting to wake up to just some of the falsehoods that we've been living under, and even the willingness to be vulnerable and talk about things that have been somewhat traumatic for them without really knowing it was trauma. But hey, that's not normal. I know we lived that way a long time, but it's not. There's a different way, a better way. And, they don't know how to do it, but that's why we're here. So I appreciate their waking up to at least considering that.
Indeed. 15 years ago, it was very hard to have that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, me included, we were in denial.
Sure.
It was normal.
Yeah, myself too.
Roger, you raised your hand.
Yeah, thanks. What I'm excited about or happy to see is a trend in this, I guess you could call it inclusivity. We've gone beyond diversity to now inclusivity, and inclusivity requires psychological safety. And so I've been doing a fair amount of conversation and coaching around psychological safety and how to create spaces of psychological safety, which create spaces for people to be themselves and tell their truth. And that was not really allowed all that long ago. And also in spaces of psychological safety that are inclusive are leaders developing emotional intelligence. 25 years ago, Daniel Goleman wrote the book, and we've been working on that. But finally, I think leaders, especially those in the more left brain professions, are like, wow, okay, these are people that I'm working with, and how can I truly connect with them? And I think that the pandemic brought that on, because people's home lives came into the work world a lot more explicitly, with kids in the background, cats walking across the desk and stuff, so it's like, wow, these are people, or aging parents with COVID or whatever. So it's like empathy and expanding your capacity as a leader to be with the whole person, not just the professional work-based person. So those are helping, I think, move towards a more conscious, connected workspace. Thanks.
Thanks, Roger. Yeah, psychological safety. Well said. Anyone else?
Yeah, what I'm noticing, particularly I see more and more of it in the coverage of the business press, is that the younger generations, and it's not just the millennials, because now millennials are middle-aged, right? So Gen Z as well, they don't want to work for companies that aren't compassionate, that aren't purpose-driven. And so it's coming from the bottom up, where people just aren't going to be available to organizations that aren't practicing consciously. And I just see more and more coverage of that. It's becoming more and more prevalent in the mainstream press to see that kind of information and those kind of stories being told.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, the data is overwhelming on that.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of that by just saying that with us being on the marketing side, the fact that so many leaders and business owners are now recognizing that they're conscious, I think is really overwhelming. Because before, they knew that they were out of place, something was different, but they didn't really know what. And now that we can talk about it and we can gather and put a name to it, I think it helps people identify themselves a little bit more and start to put some of those practices into play.
Seeing this whole new genre of conscious marketing developing.
Yeah.
So it's hitting every industry. It's
Yeah.
starting to spread out, which is terrific. Anyone else before we move on to the next question?
One more that I see just barely is just this, I guess it has been called a more balanced work life in the past versus the 12 to 15 hour days expected from the employee to grind out for their salary, and sacrifice their entire life for the company. There's even experiments, I see a couple happening like with a 4-day work week and some evidence that that's more productive than a 5-day, 8-hour expectation. You can find more energy through your employees by lessening the amount of time at work. So that's one thing, and along with that, I see this, what they're calling a hybrid work model coming forward, where you can work in the office or work wherever you are. But just finding more flexibility, supervisors getting away from, I need to see you in the office in order to feel that you're productive, to I trust you as a person with integrity that wants to make a difference, and you'll get the work done that we've agreed to. That's autonomy, empowering employees in the relationship with their employer. So that's starting to happen too, because they learned, oh, you will be productive when you're at home every day during the pandemic. I can trust you. It did work out. Interesting. Okay, how can we make this happen? And employees demanding that freedom now, not being willing to just be in the office because their boss said that's the only way they know how to manage their productivity. So those are good signs too. Thanks.
Yeah, it's an essential human need to have, you mentioned the word autonomy, you need control over how, when, where we work. So well said, thank you, Roger. Well, let's flip the script now and talk about on the other end of the spectrum, right? We live in a world of polarity, and I think we have to honor that. So the question now is, what are some signs, some markers, some evidence that you're seeing that's causing you to think, we still have a long way to go? What's not working? What's keeping conscious business from becoming a bigger part of our reality? Why does organizations like CBI that Peter founded, like, why is it even needed? Why is it still needed? Why are we on this call? What are some areas that we have to start improving on, start making some progress on? So flipping the script, I'd love to hear from you from that angle in terms of the work that still needs to be done.
I'm going to start here.
Go for it.
When I see the floods in Germany and the fires in California and the highest temperatures in Sweden and shit going down all areas of our planet, and we don't do anything about it, nothing is changing in terms of our behaviors. So that's a big concern of mine.
Well, Peter, companies are pledging to go net carbon neutral by 2080. It's going to be plenty of time. Don't worry about it.
Also, story about 8 years that just came out.
the climate's definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I just and I you know, I don't want to make it a one issue thing, but I do, you know, with Peter, I agree. And you know, the thing that disturbed me that I saw the other day was that actually the pollution's increasing, right? So even the whole net carbon neutral thing is kind of a pipe dream, and it's just it baffles me that collectively we're not getting it, and business is such a major player in that. So that's very top of mind to me, like constantly.
Indeed.
Yeah, for me, I'm very passionate about everything that I've learned in the work environment for the last 20 years of my life, which was in international companies. And now I'm very passionate about how that kind of system really separates you from where you are authentically. And it's a pre-designed system into which is pyramidal, and very few people get to have like the lottery a position. So everybody is like fighting for that only one position that somebody else designed, that was like success looked like. So we lost our authenticity, and I leave that. So I'm very passionate just to find the other way, like the other polarity, because I think that you should not, nobody should struggle that way or that much into a system that it's naturally designed to separate instead of integrating. It's not diverse, it's not inclusive. So I'm really, really passionate about finding the other polarity on that, and giving a more sustainable way of working and capitalizing our beautiful selves in an authentic way.
Thank you.
To piggyback on the point that Leticia just made about the system, I think we kind of have to address the elephant in the room, that capitalism at its base is designed to be the antithesis of purpose, of consciousness. Like capitalism is all about maximizing the work that the workers are going to do and extracting out the return on investment, so to speak. And which is why you now have people pushing back against, 12, 14-hour work days. And so you've got some CEOs that are like, yes, this is wrong. We need to explore 410s or alternate ways. But then you also have the businesses that are like, no, we're going back to how things were before. And I've been telling everyone, like, if you're in a rush back to get back to normal, so to speak, then you've missed the mark on what this moment in time is about. And so I feel like we have a big challenge in that we are going against a systemic, huge system that is capitalism, that is built on not giving you time to be authentic in yourself, not giving you time to self-reflect, to ask yourself what you want, where you're trying to go, what you're meant to do. It's all about go, 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 not thinking. Whereas the business that we're in is we're all about thinking instead of going, being present, being in the moment. And that goes against everything that capitalism is for.
I think we were speaking to a little bit, Larry, is the transactional versus the transcendent. And we will cover that in a small way, but we're going to address some of what you just said in the next half hour. But thank you for raising it. Anyone else?
Could I just add one quick thing? I have a feeling some of this is going to work its way out in the way of, well, who is going to be successful after everything we've been through? And, given what ShiftCo is doing, well, they're growing conscious businesses. So I think that's going to be the teacher, like the role model. And so I don't know that we really need to sweat it as much. The old paradigm, the old way of doing business, as we see, is crumbling. So
Sure.
yeah, I see it as a plus.
Sure. We tend to look at these things in three buckets. There's, the global societal challenges, and we talked about climate, income inequality, right? Rising political unrest. All of us here are, based in the United States, I believe. So we feel that for sure. Then you have your business challenges, right? And it's access to talent and generational changes and I think we talked about some of that before with Gen Z and Gen Y. But also companies are facing a whole new world of competition, right? Where they're being digitized out very quickly. They're struggling with diversity and inclusion. There's a reckoning that's going on right now, and they're facing all sorts of challenges with that, rightfully so. But it's still something that when we see the results, we're like, wow, we still have a long ways to go. Like this is only now we're unlocking this, and are companies really doing anything about it or just paying lip service to it, right? So we need to look at that really honestly. And then there's a lot of the personal things, and we see it now, especially post-pandemic. People are questioning everything. They're burnt out, and there's a lack of purpose and meaning. So there's these buckets of things that we see that we still need to do some work on. And I think this is now where we transition. And I'll hand over to Peter in a moment. What is a methodology, and what is a system? What's a toolkit that we can use? So when things do break down or where things still need some healing, we can apply a system and bring together some solutions that are going to be this next evolution of growth that was just mentioned. That we're going to get there, but we still need horses to pull the cart, and there's a way to do it. And I'll hand it off to Peter now to talk about the CBI tools and systems and give us a bit of a preview on some of the things that we're working on.
I need to unmute here. Hey. First of all, it's really great to be in this small room. It's so changing. Last week we had another webinar. There were a few more people, and then we had another webinar. There were 200 people. So it's just really fun to work with different sizes of groups. But that's one of the things that's changing, is that we can have this conversation, and there are indeed 200 people coming into the room wanting to learn about this stuff. I'm just going to give you 2 or 3 little nuggets about my background so you can connect for those who you don't know where this all comes from. I used to be a tech entrepreneur, worked at Anderson Consulting, venture capitalist, and I always saw that the business world was dysfunctional. And especially as a venture capitalist, we were going into organizations every day. We saw 3-4 management teams every day, literally saw hundreds of companies that we investigated. And I saw that there's a huge dysfunction in pretty much all of these organizations. That if you gave people an option, here's another way to make money that's more fulfilling, they would be out the door right away. And secondly, what I saw is that as venture capitalists, that you look at all these areas, whether it's legal, technology, product, market, all these kind of things before you put any money down. But in the end, it all came down to people. We had, in the end, we had 3 investment criteria. That was people, people, people. And still today, it's a hip shot when investors go into companies and invest because they don't know how the people will react. This whole idea about building a people-centric organization is still a big cloud. And so what we're trying to do is put this big cloud at the cornerstone of the business, because in the end, it needs to be about people, we believe. So how do we do that? And let me share a couple of slides, and Roger, and I think Nora, for you as well, you've probably seen some of these. So you can just come along and really look at your own business that you want to create in light of this, what we're showing here. But the question that we've been asking in 2008, I believe, when I was in Napa at some point in time, is what really differentiates an inspiring and conscious business from an ordinary one? When is a business there where we really want to have it, instead of still tinkering around with not creating sustainable environment, being good to people, etc. And what came to me is these 4 quadrants. Now look at it for your own business that you have. This is a model that can work for yourself as an individual. This is a model that can work for business. It can work for a school. It can work for a government. It can work in all areas of life. So if you look at the top left quadrants, if you are able to fully express yourself in that business, Roger, for yourself, for example, you said you wanted to work more on the consciousness side with companies. if you can engage with organizations and fully express yourself and be heard and be recognized for that, that's what we're all seeking as human beings, to fully self-express. If you can express your purpose, if you know your gifts and talents, but also if you know your what we call out of power behaviors, when you're operating from fear, from stress, those kind of things. So this is where you're raising your consciousness to fully show up as yourself. It's something we all want as human beings, right? If you then in a team connect with like-minded individuals, where you're not just working with people, but you might actually share a vacation with each other, because in the end, a big human need that we have is to feel connected with each other. If you can create those kind of teams. Bottom left, if you can then make a difference in the world, because we all want to make a difference. We all want to contribute to this world. If you can create a culture where everybody comes in and say, wow, I want to be part of this organization because it's just a culture that inspires me. And lastly, on the bottom right, if you can create money with it. If you can create that organization, or if you can work in that organization, is there any reason you would want to leave? Anybody of you? Probably not, huh? So we've asked tons of people over the years, and all of them say, no, this is it. This is what we want to create. The problem is that organizations work on this bottom right corner. They work on the profits and margins sector. They might do team development, they might do individual developments, they might create a purpose culture, but in the end, when there's a finance crisis, if some people fall by the wayside, if we focus back on, oh, survival, I need to make profits and margins, then this entire model breaks apart. And all of these quadrants, these other quadrants become a lip service. And that's why cultures break down. That's why organizational teams break down. That's why we create trouble inside of organizations. So the question is, how can we create an organization where these four quadrants are fulfilled from the get-go, but also in tricky situations? And Larry, you mentioned you're looking for an approach, or you're working with organizations. If you just look at your client organizations where these are all fulfilled, is that something they would be looking for, right? And the question around this is, what's this leadership paradigm, the conscious leadership paradigm that can create this in an organization, but also maintain this as we move along. Now, if you look at these four quadrants, if you look at this framework, if you look at your own life, with your own family, for example, with your spouse, if you're in a relationship, you want to be self-fulfilled, you want to self-express, you want to connect to them, you want to have a common purpose, maybe build a house together, and you want to create positive results. You want to be financially sustained. Same is true in organization, same is true in an educational institution. So these four quadrants hold true in all areas of our life. If we can create an organization around those four quadrants, our thesis is that it's going to be a company that's pretty inspiring and pretty damn good. Now, if you take one moment and reflect for yourself at your own situation in your life, whether it's private, where you feel some pinches, whether it's in your business, whether you feel some uncertainties or just not clear, can you detect in which areas of these four quadrants that might be, or maybe in the leadership circle? Just reflect for a moment. And if you feel so tickled, then share with us. Any thoughts? Nora, you're so intent.
I will speak. This is Sandy.
Sandy, and then Nora.
You know, from my perspective, I think we honestly, having my most former job being as Chief Human Resources Officer, from my perspective, I have strived for all of these things in our organization, in the organization I was at. The problem is nobody was listening until the pandemic. And now all of a sudden they're listening.
Yeah.
And I guess that, you know, the saying timing is everything, right? And
yeah, sometimes it requires timing, but you're probably you're living the dichotomy, because as an HR officer, you're in charge of creating this to some extent, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and so
is the counterpart oftentimes in an organization who's just focused on the bottom right.
Exactly. It's kind of like, what's the business plan? And then you have the results, but what comes in the middle are the people.
Yeah.
And typically, if these 5 things were in place, the results would be even better, right?
Yes. Yeah.
We all know that. And it's been, everybody's used the word engagement for years. Well, I call it, and I always have called it, employee experience. Now
Mhm.
that's a big term, EX. Now they have a term for it, EX. So when at the end of the day, what people want and have always wanted is to feel like they've had purpose, to feel like they have a purpose in the organization, and to be appreciated for it.
Mhm.
As we,
Appreciate it.
as we are in life for the most part, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes we just want to feel appreciated,
Yeah.
bottom line. So
Core human
those are
need.
my thoughts about it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Sandra. I'll speak a little bit more to that in a minute, but thank you. Nora?
Well, you know what? I'm still working on the individual section. I thought I was, well, and I feel like I was, at least to my understanding, I was engaged when I was with the company that I was with for 23 years until the last few years, to the point that I had to leave the organization. And it's been a few years, and I'm just now, at that point where, all right, well, my next thing is creating my own business. But it's like I'm still like, okay, where's the tribe to do that side by side with? So I'm still in that process. So yeah, still working on the individual, and the team is what I feel like I'm now ready to form. But it's not quite there yet.
Yeah. So you're looking for genuine connections where it can be in your team or even outside, where you have your network of people.
Yeah, like, working at least side by side, even though I'll be a solopreneur, but working side by side in, our shared vision and purpose.
Yeah. Does
Yeah.
anybody of you experience that when you transitioned out of the existing environment into a new one? That you're like, holy cow, where's my tribe here? Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
That's been tough.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I was just going to add that I'm in full agreement with all of this. The work that we do is about shifting people to this broader perspective beyond the profits and the margins. We've created workshops and experiences to address the individual, the team, the organization, the leadership. So, I mean, part of why I came to this webinar in the beginning was like just from skimming the website, like this sounds like people who do the things that I do, that love the things that I love, which is why I'm here. So it's refreshing to see this conversation and to see this kind of material, being presented. Because like you said, when you're shifting to this type of work, it is isolating. It's where is my tribe? Where are the people who feel the same way I feel about these clear problems in the world? So it's affirming to see this. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Larry. Leticia?
Yes, I completely agree. I mean, this is like the right path, and it sense it feels good. But I was wondering, what are your expectation or your suggestion when you are talking about this framework and you see the individual and the full engagement and everything that we do in a company? To begin with the individual, but when the individual is really immersed in this system that I was talking about before, that the individual is not even conscious about what we're talking about, and they're still like inside the system, and what they think they pursue is the path of the system per se. So I think that would be a challenge in my case. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually, which leads us to the next thing that we wanted to do. This is a little bit of a Trojan horse. In the end, we're interested in raising the consciousness of human beings and of entire systems. Yeah, that's the purpose of what we want to create here. This is a little bit of a Trojan horse, and it speaks a little bit to what Sandy said earlier. It's a system that not just the HR department, but the entire organization, even the strategic department, the CEO can get their arms around, because suddenly it becomes a strategy of how the organization could look like. And I'll speak a little bit more to that. So what we're finding is when we have these conversations, suddenly the CEO is on board and not just the HR team, and saying, this is something that I would like to create for my organization. But in the end, when we go into our programs, now I'm going to outline them a little bit, that we basically, just like you, Larry, we have a module for each of these quadrants and the conscious leadership circle. So as we lead individuals and entire teams through our programs, step by step, one module at a time, we see that over time their consciousness changes. So what they're buying is the system. What they're buying is answers to their deep questions. So we speak about purpose. We speak about how can you position yourself as a leader. We speak about how can you systematically build a purpose-driven culture. We speak about how can you get a team from competition to collaboration. How can you break down conflicts, those kind of things. How can you create engaged teams? So those are all pull situations where most people say, I want to be part of this program. And we experience that when we offer this program we have 70 seats available, sign up voluntarily, it's booked. It's booked inside of companies because it answers the deeper questions that we all have as human beings. So they're in the system, they're going through this program. And to your question, Leticia, as they go through it, we can massage them over time. And we see that their consciousness raises over time and the way they interact with each other. Is it a guaranteed process? Not for everyone. Now, some people say, oh, this is way out there for me. I can't deal with this. And people just jump right in. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Leticia?
Yeah, but now I have another question, a secondary question, because just thinking from a corporate perspective, it's like having no control of where, I'm going to say it horribly, but that's how my mind is visualizing this right now. It's like the system somehow is created for a reason, from my opinion, for control and for people to do what they expect or what they need to do so that they continue to run the system, right? Mm-hmm. If you deliver this and you're like freeing that control and making it with another basis, which is more truthful and it's more authentic for the people, but not necessarily for the system. So what has been your challenges in this term, or have you had any like this kind of discussion?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we just had a big project with a telecommunication company, and they have selected 250 transformational leaders, which are supposed to transform the organization. So they know that transformation needs to happen, and they know it's damn difficult. So they've selected these 250 people. It's like, good luck, guys, in this behemoth of a company. So these individuals were really open. They wanted to hear about this. They were so thankful because they said, we are in a collective depression, all of us, from this. And we have to go back into this workplace. And our CEO tells us, you have to come back. This is an office first culture. And they're all like, screw you, I don't want to come back. So they are miserable. So they are really, really thankful about these approaches. And then it bumps against the wall where they're hitting the old system. Yeah, because the old system is still in place. We are not focusing on the old system. What we are providing, and I think this is what Einstein says, you never win by fighting an old system. Yeah, so we are not wanting to change something. Let me repeat that. We don't want to change something because changing something leads to resistance. What we are providing is simply an alternative pathway. Yeah, and people choose to walk with this pathway. So our task really is, what we find in these programs is to help people. How can I live this in this current environment? How can I be true to myself in the current environment and live this? Yeah, so one example is down here is building a purpose-driven culture, which works for everybody wants that, is how can I create a purpose-driven culture, work how I want to live as a middle manager that's congruent, still fulfills the demands of the top, but also still fulfills the demands of more purpose from the bottom. How can I create that? Now then we have wide open doors. Make sense? Any other questions?
Yeah, it's Roger.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Peter. One of the things, you mentioned that the dysfunctional system will focus on the business profits when there's pressure. And so everything goes out the door and then it doesn't work. And I've got a client where that has happened time and time again. And I do believe the organization is in a collective depression because trust is totally eroded. And it's like, okay, you're going to use people to balance the bottom line every time. And so we know our heads are going to roll. And I look at that and I say, why? Why do the senior leaders consistently lay off people as a go-to move to make the investors happy? Apparently it makes them happy because they always talk about, shareholder value. And this is how we increase it and make sure that the engine is running to produce that value for whoever these people are, the Wall Street investors. And it's like, to me, I'm like, well, why do they scuttlebutt all this other stuff, individual, team, and organization, in the name of profits? Because they don't believe it actually matters. They don't believe that focusing on these things would produce the profits they need. The only way they can produce it is to lay people off. So I think part of the problem is measures that these things matter. They make a difference. They really do produce profit. And sacrificing them is a big mistake when it comes to long-term sustainability and profitability. So maybe speak to that a little bit in terms of how we continue to keep the value of all four quadrants alive, even especially during high pressure times when the bottom line is being threatened.
Yeah, and we might not. I mean, I fall back every day. We all fall back every day. We screw up every day because our mind is programmed, our brain is programmed to be beneath the line. Yeah, in out of power mode, fear mode, scarcity mode. It's what it does default wise.
Yes.
So it takes conscious effort to step out of it. And our entire system, whether it's a legal system that sues CEOs if they don't meet shareholders' expectations, we've created a system around that supports that. So again, when I don't want to fight against the system because it's the old model of fighting against the system, I'm choosing to work with organizations and individuals that are open to considering a different path. Yeah, and others might go there and others might not. Nora, I'll be with you in a second, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, when we work with organizations, some organizations might not be ready. We're engaging with a big investment bank in New York. They might not be ready. Yeah, they're like, oh, I'm not sure whether I want to work with you guys. Other companies that might be a little smaller are full on ready. They don't want to do it anymore. Nora.
I'm finding, because I used to think that, okay, I want to do the conscious business consulting, but what it's become in the last year, and I clearly saw this in a recent consultation with a client, it's really coming down to the deep-seated beliefs and ideas, blocks within the individual. So I think it's both. It's I was going into this session with him thinking we were going to do some strategizing and process, procedure, and that type of thing. But what it came down to, I was very surprised. It came down to like this guy having an emotional breakdown, and like getting to the core of childhood trauma is what it was. So I feel both need to play together now, and that's, I was resistant to getting into this like deep-seated emotional stuff. I've been very resistant until now. I'm like, I have to. this is, you know, this is where I'm being called, even though I didn't want to, and I thought it was too woo-woo. This is it. There's a need for it. And I clearly saw it in a recent session.
Yeah. Yeah, in the end, it comes to trauma. Yeah, and we are not trauma therapists, so we don't go there. We provide other ways to think about these things. Have you seen The Wisdom of Trauma, anybody? Maybe you can put that in the chat box. It's a movie that's available starting today again. You got to see that. It's fascinating. The Wisdom of Trauma. Really amazing movie. But ultimately it comes down to personal things. So again, that's why we are playing with this and saying, what can we create in terms of a system for organizations to make this work? And so my question would be, let me share this again here. What if you had a system for yourself, but also for the businesses that you work with, or your own business, where you can diagnose? This is what we are currently creating. This is what's Joe's spearheading, where you can create a real-time diagnosis where you stand in these 4 quadrants and the leadership circle. So that I, as an individual, but also I, as a leader of my team, or I, as an executive of an entire organization, see exactly where my people stand in these 4 quadrants. Are they fulfilled? Are they checked out? Are they happy? Do they not trust? What do they think about the culture before they walk out the door? And to do that on a real-time basis, so I can look at it every day and say, where do my people really stand? Where does the culture really stand? So this suddenly gives the CEO or the leader a perspective, because Microsoft says that the leader knows 4%, the CEO knows 4% of what's going on in the company, or the executives. That's not very much. So if we can create this transparency around these human factors, but also the business factors, a little bit like an SAP for the human side, and then provide direct remedies, whether through direct videos, because we know what's going on, or through the programs that we have, so that companies can say, wow, we implement this program and it really helps improve our numbers. Yeah, and then we measure again, and then we scale it out to all the people around there. Suddenly we have a system that can systematically improve an organization, manageable and measurable. Yeah, so what if that would be possible? Suddenly it would bring light to where organizations stand. Yeah, where they truly stand, what's truly going on. Yeah, and then again, what we are playing with is this model. What it ultimately comes down to, Nora, that comes to you, is that ultimately we speak to people that our existing model of success is what's making us suffer. And that's the consciousness shift that we all have to understand. It's not the tools and the processes that we do, but it's the consciousness shift that this existing model of success is what's making us suffer. That we are all educated in a scarcity model, where we have to do more, we have to accumulate more stuff in order to become somebody. This is how our society functions. Accumulate more stuff, accumulate more stuff, accumulate a new title, accumulate the pyramid that you talked about, the scarce jobs up there, and constantly do more. And it exhausts us, it exhausts our resources, and it doesn't make us happy. There's no room for happiness in here. Yeah, so if we want to change to a conscious leadership model, conscious business model ourselves, or as an organization, we have to shift to a new model, which we use is to be authentically you, to do what your gifts inspire, and to create essence, the feeling states that we want to experience, abundance being one of them. But the whole model starts with being yourself. How many of you have had courses in asking who are you really here to be during your lifetime in your school? I didn't have it. so to have those that's our first module, to have people and give people an understanding who are they here to be, what's their authenticity on a maybe even on a spiritual level that really reaches high. What is their unique gift and talent they're here to express, where you step into the flow. Yeah, and when we do that, just close your eyes for a moment. Let's ask yourself, just close your eyes for a moment. And just find a way where you constantly have to do something. I mean, you're working for something, you know those jobs because you've been in them, where it was about being more and being time pressured, and you can feel how it feels in your body. And if you sense into this, you can feel the scarcity around that, the pressure. Not enough time. Oh, I'm not good enough. This is not good enough. And now let that fall off like dust for a moment. Let some wind blow it away. And just find a moment where you are completely being yourself. Sandy, when you were looking at your grandkids talking to the ducks, where you're being yourself in a situation, just bring your authentic personalities and do what you enjoy doing. And as you feel into this, might be on a mountaintop, it doesn't matter. Is there any scarcity? Sense a complete sense of flow, don't you? Sense of expansion. And just sit in that for a little longer. And just ask yourself if you and the people in a team could show up in that way. If you would be able to see them for who they truly are. What's the energy in the room like? Then just slowly open your eyes again and come back. I realize we're out of time here, but are you guys okay going a little longer? Anybody needs to leave?
About 15 minutes is fine for me.
Okay. Let's do
I
that.
have to run.
Thanks. So anything you want to share, any experiences? Or was it just nice to close your eyes?
Moment of silence.
Well, I'll share. When I was thinking of a particular team that there were a lot of issues. And then when you took us to that, just tap into the beingness of this team. Wow, I just felt peace and appreciation for them, regardless of, how they may have behaved routinely in the past.
Things calm down, huh?
Oh, extremely, yeah.
Yeah. Roger?
Yeah, I had an interesting experience because in the first scenario of the scarcity mindset, which is normal in the world, in the culture, in my experience, it's like constantly trying to be okay and make sure that I'm approved and accepted and making the difference that I'm supposed to be making. And it's constant kind of anxiety that I'm keeping at bay by being aware of it and experiencing it. And then in the second model, I was like, wow, I'm relaxed. And I noticed a part of me going, you're about to get your ass kicked. You're about to get shut down. You're about to be rejected. You're about to have something bad happen because you're relaxed and not vigilant and making sure that you're productive and approved. So that was interesting.
Oh. There it is for you, right?
Exactly.
That's the cat meditation.
Thanks.
For me,
Thank you.
it reminded me to take these moments to close my eyes and take a deep breath and remember that it is that ultimately, you know, what I strive for is love and abundance in my life, you know, and whatever forms they come, and try not to think in terms of scarcity, because it is so easy to go there.
Mhm.
And I hope this doesn't digress too much, but if people remember the book called Simple Abundance, it was
I'm
back
not-
in the 80s, and it was a daily affirmation, and it was a huge big seller, bestseller on the New York Times list for I don't know how long time. Anyway, sold millions of copies. You know, the woman who wrote it went broke. And to listen to her story about what happened with her life is pretty amazing. And it's because she lost her way, right? Of not remembering why she wrote the book and what the book was really about. And a really interesting story. And that's so just even taking that moment and talking about and feeling how to be your authentic self, which is something I do strive for every single day, because we have so many pressures on our lives to be and act in, you know, a certain way. And it's, you know, whether it's, you know, how we look or our bodies or this or, you know, all those things. So it's, I love the idea of just thinking about my grandson and him simply asking about the ducks, you know, and it really does come down to that simplicity and being in the moment and being your true authentic self. If we can do that 24/7, I'm sure we'd be living a grand life.
Yep. They tell us just be authentic, but it's not so easy.
No, it's not.
Well, could I just add to what you guys are saying is, you know, I was trained to look for the bad for a long time. I did nearly 2 decades of large-scale organized fraud investigations. And now I'm like, gosh, get out of that. And yes, tune into, you know, like where you took us, tune into the essence. That I really need to remember to do that more.
Yeah, I totally agree. And thank you for the exercise, because it was simple. It was like 2 minutes or 3. And it gets you to really listen to the different voices in your mind, right? You have the ego voice where the scarcity presents and where all the fatal scenarios can come. And that's clearly your ego. And then comes your biggest self, which presents you with all your fullness and your opportunities and your and how bright you are, and how being authentic is being enough. And if you see that for yourself, you can see that in others. And I think just that has a lot of value in our day-by-day journey. So thank you so much for that, just bringing that up and helping us just to realize all those different voices in our heads.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's also, I mean, the combination of what you just said, Leticia and Nora. Nora, you spent 20 years, you said, looking on one side. You can see the neural pathways in your brain being thick like freeways. If we spend the amount of time on authenticity and on that being state, how powerful our neural pathways could be. Yeah, but it takes practice. And maybe to conclude, I want to share this last thing. Just want to share a couple of ideas about the master program that we're offering here. And it might not be for you, it might be for people you know, but if you do, it would be great. We have about 5 seats available still, otherwise it's booked out. But what we are basically creating is a program that over a period of 11 months certifies you in this approach, but also guides you on this journey, individual, team, purpose, business, and then the leadership circle. And what we want to create is really individuals that can go out there with us together or by themselves to create purpose-driven businesses in their environment as leaders or as coaches, facilitators. What we've also included is a faculty, which you can find online, which is truly a class. I mean, former Unilever CEO Paul Polman is there. There's one of the leading impact investors in the world, Charlie Kleisner, those kind of people. So it's truly a program that's, I think, unlike anything else out there at this time. And there's one special module that we have, which is about how can we bring this in the world together, whether you're inside an organization or whether you're running your own shop. How can we bring it into the world? Because we've seen that people struggle with that at times. Yeah. So we have a limited group size. It's starting in September. If you would like more information, here's the link for it. And we offer payment plans that are available as well. So just wanted to throw that out to you. It might not be for you, it might be for somebody that you know, but again, we have 5 seats available. And if you're interested, just reach out or take a look at the website. Do you have any questions or thoughts otherwise?
So I just would like to close the loop where we started with Joe's leading us through that joy process, because Peter and Joe, it's been a joy to be with you again. I always enjoyed my time with you, and just happy to introduce you to SchiffCo. We're working with Peter and Joe to have some of their content in our online learning system. So I look forward to making that happen. And then just very briefly, all of our public events are free. So if you enjoyed this as much as I think we all did, and I invite you to go to our events page. So the website is schiffco.global, and then go to the events link. And these are the events coming up. We've got Using Video to Grow Your Business on August 5th, and Social Media Marketing for Conscious Entrepreneurs on the 12th. And just, I want to say, whether you are a member or not, take advantage of all the free events that you would like. We'd love you to be a member, but if you're not, please join us in any case. And I would tell you that if you do decide to become a member of SchiffCo, our vision is to elevate business to shift humanity, and our mission is to grow, help entrepreneurs grow conscious brands. And our members who join do definitely grow their businesses. So we would love to have you as a member if you feel so led. So again, Peter and Joe, thanks so much. It really has been a joy, and I just look forward to staying in touch with you guys and with everyone here that was attended today. Thanks for being patient with us and going a little bit over time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody. It was
Thank you,
wonderful.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Wonderful.